The morning sunlight spilled gently through the tall oak trees of Central Park in New York City, where the grass glowed like emerald silk after a night of rain and the world looked peaceful as if it had paused to breathe before the day truly began. And yet inside a quiet corner of the city a storm was already forming in the life of a man who never thought he would become anyone's hero. Ethan Miller was a sixth-grade science teacher at Riverside Public School, a man known more for his kindness than for his voice, a man who carried a gentle smile like a fragile treasure in a world often too loud to hear people like him. He rode his bicycle to school each morning through the beautiful stretch of West End Avenue, watching the city slowly awaken alongside him, the slow hum of traffic slowly shifting into thunder as buses rolled past and car horns echoed like impatient heartbeat. His days were simple, his world small but soft, his purpose hidden like a seed waiting for the right season to bloom. But on this day the sunrise did not bring calm to Ethan's heart, for he carried worries that no one could see. He was the oldest brother in his family and the only one supporting his younger sister Lily, whose medical bills had been growing higher with each passing month. Some days he would walk into his quiet classroom, place his hands on the wooden desk and fight the ache in his chest, reminding himself that being strong was not the same as never feeling tired. Yet even as he carried his hidden pain, Ethan never let his burdens dull the light he gave to others in his classroom. The children adored him. They called him the teacher who listened, the teacher who believed in them even when they did not believe in themselves. There was one student in particular who tugged softly at his heart, a quiet boy named Noah Reed, a shy child who always sat in the second row, eyes fixed downward like a flower afraid of the sun. Noah lived on the rougher edge of the city where heavy trucks rattled the streets late into the night and fear often chased sleep away before morning could arrive. That morning, while the city sparkled with gentle beauty and the breeze carried the scent of wet grass, a sharp cry of a bus horn cracked through the stillness, and Ethan looked up from his bicycle for a moment, feeling something he could not name, a tug in his chest like a warning he did not yet understand. His life was about to change, and he had no idea that before the sun set he would be forced to make a choice most people never face, a choice that would demand courage he never knew lived inside him. Because sometimes a hero is not born in glory or applause but in silence, in ordinary people who rise in extraordinary moments, when love becomes stronger than fear and when the heart learns to run faster than doubt. And this was the morning when Ethan's moment quietly began. The school day began like any other, but something in the air felt heavier than usual, as if the clouds above the city carried a secret no one had spoken yet. Ethan greeted each student with his warm, steady voice, but behind his smile his mind wandered back to the envelope from the hospital that still sat unopened on his kitchen counter. He already knew what it would say: more money, more deadlines, more pressure, and yet there was nothing he could do except keep moving forward like a man walking across a bridge made of thin glass. During lunch he noticed Noah sitting alone near the school garden, the wind gently moving through the maple trees while children laughed in the distance. Noah was tracing shapes into the dirt with a twig, his shoulders hunched like someone who had learned to shrink before the world could notice him. Ethan sat beside him without asking a single question, and the boy slowly looked up, eyes filled with that quiet sadness. Children try so hard to hide but never truly can. After a long pause Noah spoke in a soft voice barely above a whisper, "My mom had to work another double shift last night. I wanted to tell her about my science project but she fell asleep before I finished the sentence." Ethan's heart tightened inside his chest because he saw in the boy's silence the reflection of his own burdens, two people carrying weight they never asked for but carrying it anyway. When school ended, Ethan walked his bicycle along the sidewalk beside the long line of yellow buses, their engines rumbling like caged thunder, a reminder of the heavy world just beyond the school gates. He watched Noah walking alone toward the bus stop, his backpack hanging low, his shoes too worn for a child, his head slightly bowed like someone quietly fading from the edges of the world. Ethan felt a pull inside him, a whisper telling him this boy needed more than a teacher. He needed someone who would stand in the gap before it was too late. That night, as the city glowed under streetlights and the wide Hudson River shimmered beneath the sky, he kept thinking about Noah. He thought about the way the boy's voice trembled when he spoke about home. He thought about how some children become invisible not because no one sees them but because no one truly looks. The next morning snow clouds rolled over New York, casting silver shadows across the skyline. Ethan arrived early and stood at his classroom window watching heavy traffic crawl across the avenue below. He felt something unspoken tightening in the air, a feeling like the quiet before a storm. His breath fogged softly against the glass, and for a moment he wondered how many people in this city were fighting silent battles behind small gentle smiles like his and like Noah's. He did not know that just a few hours later life would tilt sideways into chaos and force him to make a decision from the deepest part of his soul, the kind of decision that transforms an ordinary teacher into something far greater. Because sometimes destiny waits not in loud moments but in still ones, gathering strength like a wave before it breaks across the shore. And destiny was already walking toward him faster than he knew. The storm did not begin with thunder, it began with silence, a silence so sudden that it felt unnatural even inside the busy streets of the city. By noon the sky had turned colder and the wind pushed dry leaves across the pavement like restless whispers. Ethan had taken his class on a short learning walk to the park across from the school, a small corner of nature tucked between towering buildings where the grass still held a gentle green and maple trees painted the sky with their branches. The children laughed as they chased each other through the garden paths, but Ethan kept a close eye on Noah, who was walking quietly near the sidewalk where traffic roared just a few feet away. Today the road was packed with heavy vehicles, a long line of cars mixed with city buses rumbling like restless giants through the cold air. Snow had not yet begun to fall, but the clouds crouched low as if waiting for the right moment to release their weight. While the others were watching a squirrel race up a tree, a sound broke through the air, the sudden screech of tires against wet pavement followed by a deep violent honk that rattled the street. A city bus had swerved sharply to avoid a delivery truck that had jumped its lane, and in that terrifying second the bus skidded toward the sidewalk where Noah was standing frozen in fear. Time seemed to shatter into slow pieces. Ethan did not think, he simply ran. His feet barely touched the ground as he crossed the grass, and the cries of children blurred into a distant echo. He reached Noah just as the massive bus lurched out of control, and with one fierce motion he grabbed the boy, pushing him out of the path of disaster. The world roared like an earthquake as the bus slammed into the corner railing just inches from where they had been standing. The impact shook the pavement, the metal groaning under the weight of the engine, and the smell of burning rubber filled the air. Noah stumbled backward and collapsed onto the grass, breathing fast with wide, terrified eyes, while Ethan stood trembling, swallowing back the shock that thudded through his body like a drum. He had not chosen heroism, he had simply chosen love, a reflex born from the instinct to protect a child he refused to lose. But the danger was not over. The front of the bus had crumpled against the barrier and smoke was already leaking from beneath the hood. People inside were shouting, pounding on the glass, panic rising like a tide. Several students began to cry, others clung to each other, frozen in place as sirens in the distance began to stir awake. Ethan looked toward the bus driver, trapped behind the wheel, blood on his forehead, the windshield beginning to crack beneath the pressure. He knew he could walk away now. He had saved his student. That alone was more than most people ever did. But heroes are not simply people who run once. Heroes are people who run again and again, even when their lungs burn with fear. Without hesitation he turned back to Noah, whispered, "Stay here, you are safe now," and rushed toward the smoking vehicle. The last thing he heard as he raced forward was the desperate call of his students, "Mr. Miller, come back." But he did not stop, because sometimes the heart knows when the rest of the world is still thinking. And this was the moment when kindness became courage and courage became sacrifice. Smoke poured from the bus like a wounded storm, and the screams inside grew sharper as Ethan climbed onto the broken side rail, pulling himself through the shattered doorway. The heat struck his face and the smell of fuel wrapped around him, thick and choking, but he did not turn back. The driver was pinned by the steering column, his hands shaking, his breathing shallow. Ethan braced his shoulder against the bent frame and pushed with every ounce of strength he had, muscles trembling, fire stinging his throat. The metal shifted just enough and he pulled the driver free, helping him limp toward the exit. But inside the bus 2 more passengers were trapped toward the back, a young woman holding a toddler, both crying as the smoke thickened. Ethan hurried toward them, stumbling as the vehicle groaned beneath him. The toddler clung to his neck, trembling as he carried the child first, then turned back for the woman whose leg had been caught beneath the seat frame. He lifted with a raw desperation born not from power but from love, and she finally broke free, tears streaking down her face as she leaned on him for balance. He guided them all out one by one until the cold air struck their lungs and the first wail of approaching sirens filled the street. Children were shouting, teachers were running, neighbors had spilled out of nearby shops, but no one had moved as fast as the quiet man who had simply refused to let fear win. When his students saw him step out of the smoke, they ran to him like a tide. Noah was the first to reach him, throwing his arms around Ethan's waist with a trembling whisper, "You saved me," his voice soft but overflowing with a gratitude that words could barely hold. Ethan's knees nearly buckled under the weight of emotion, for in that moment he realized he had not only saved a life, he had taught a child what love looks like when it is willing to act. The paramedics checked him for injuries, but all he felt was the deep ache of relief, a feeling that tasted like prayer more than triumph. Reporters arrived later, fire crews secured the scene, but long after the flashing lights had faded, the memory of that day would still burn inside every person who witnessed it. In the following week, parents sent letters, students brought flowers, the city honored him at a small ceremony in the park where it all happened. People called him a hero, but Ethan never believed he had done anything extraordinary. He believed he had simply done what love demands. When someone is in danger, he still went home to hospital bills and sleepless nights and quiet burdens, but he carried something new inside him, a gentler strength, a reminder that his life mattered more than he had ever allowed himself to believe. The boy he saved, Noah, never walked alone again. He waited for Ethan each morning before school, sometimes bringing his small drawings, sometimes just bringing his quiet smile. They had both carried loneliness in silence, but now they carried hope together, and it looked a little like sunlight returning after a storm. Some heroes do not wear medals, some heroes just show up at the exact moment the world needs them the most. And on that winter afternoon, a teacher who doubted his own worth discovered that a single moment of courage can change every life it touches. Dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, please write your thoughts in the comments. Your words inspire more people than you realize and help kindness reach further into the world. Do not forget to like this video, share it with others who need encouragement today, and kindly subscribe to the channel Kindness Quest so more stories of compassion and hope can continue to shine.